Joe, where's the starting point for a painting for you?
When I finished the last one. My life is like, I always said it's like painting the Brooklyn Bridge. When you get to the end, you have to go back to the other end and start over. You know, it's like the length of time that it takes me to make a painting, 3-4 months. It used to take as much as 12 or 14 months. You know, I'm going to be there for a while, and then when it's done, the next day, start a new one.
So with a new one, do you decide who you want to paint, or do you make a lot of photographs of different people, friends and so on, and then decide from the photograph?
Yeah, I have lots of time while I'm working to think about what I want to do next. And during that 4-month period or whatever, I'll be photographing people. And then some of those images float to the top. Not necessarily what I would predict either. There's some people I really want to paint, and I don't have a photograph that demands to be painted. And another photograph, another Polaroid that I was much less interested in photographing that person perhaps, it just demands to be painted. And I'm plagued with indecision. I can't decide what to order in a restaurant.
What about the individual marks though that you make? Because anyone now looking at the marks you've started to make on the canvas there and the photograph of the face, for them there won't be any immediate connection. But obviously in the finished painting, it will absolutely evoke Philip's face. But how does that process work for you? Can you make any mark you want and then just you have to...
I don't know how it happens, to tell you the truth. When I did the things that are more like those multiples over there where there's 1 dot per square, then it was, which of course is all pre-digital. I mean, I did these things before computers, before pixels. You know, they're pixels from here rather than anywhere else.
Pixels on the screen blown up, yeah.
Yeah, but what I do is do something very similar to what the computer does, which is average together everything in that area. But the computer, at least so far, is sort of coldly mechanical because it doesn't know what it's looking at. You can build a certain amount of variation and variety into your program, but it's not going to do it because it knows what it's looking at. It's going to do it because every third or fourth shape is going to be done a different way. But in my case, what I'm doing is I get tired of what I'm doing. Computers don't get tired. They don't get bored. But if you paint, you get tired of doing things a certain way, and you get bored doing it a certain way. And you don't want to just do all the squares the same way. So I entertain myself by trying to do something in a kind of ass-backwards way. Like, I remember when I was doing the portrait of Bill Clinton, he was smiling and his teeth were like 5 chiclets in a row. And I realized that what happened was one square, those squares became symbols. Each square was a tooth, count the number of squares, that's how many teeth. Well, no other squares in the painting are done that way. You know, an eye is made of many different odd shapes. So what I had to do was go back and find some other way, you know, to move those white shapes of the teeth together. So I made something, anybody who's old enough to remember Lil Abner, they're sort of shmoo shape, the least likely kind of shape that would end up making teeth. Well, that's like a hoot, to take a shape that couldn't possibly, under any stretch of the imagination, become teeth and make them be teeth. There might be a place where there's a long straight line, you know, like you're building a house out of bricks and it just stopped there. And it's hard to get that to look like, you know, someone's face that's round or whatever. But it's more fun to do it in a way, more interesting to do it in a way that is unlikely. I could give the same photograph that I'm working from to 5 other artists who also work from photographs. And they would make something that when reproduced would look the same as mine. But the experience of being in front of them would have been very different.
If you made the same painting from the same photograph 4 or 5 years down the line.
Do it a different way.
Yeah.
Which is why I recycle images so much. Right now I'm recycling images that I did in the 70s, pumping them through a new medium, a new scale, different kind of physicality. But I'm painting Phil Glass now, who is my most recycled person. I think I've done 100 and some pieces based on the same 1968 photograph.
I always thought that you would have an almost photographic memory for the faces that you've scrutinized over the decades. But I discovered recently in a television program that you have a face blindness.
Right.
So when you're looking at Philip and then transferring onto the canvas, do you see everything almost microcosmically? I mean, are you looking from grid to grid when you look at a photograph, or can you hold the face for a few seconds when you turn to the canvas?
Well, first of all, the reason I work from I was driven to work to make portraits because I have face blindness, and I want to commit images to memory of people that I know and love. And in real life, 3-dimensionally, if you move your head half an inch, to me it's a whole new head I haven't seen before. And that's why I don't recognize on the street the person that I spent 4 hours having dinner with the night before, staring intently in their face, and I know everything about them. I know where they went to school, when they got married, how old their kids are, where they go to school, but I'll see them on the street next day. I have no idea that I've ever seen them before. And this is really hard to, people think I'm rude, I've heard things like, God, what a stuck-up snob, what a asshole. I spent so many evenings with him, he never says hello. Well, I don't say hello because I haven't the slightest fucking idea who they are. But if I flatten their image out and scan it, I have photographic memory.
So that is a totally memorized image for you?
Oh, yeah.
Aha, okay, now I understand.
Photographic memory of flat things, no memory of things in dimension. So if I'm going to be an artist, what do I pick to do? Well, I used to work abstractly, and then, and I still love abstraction. I still love minimalism. It makes my heart race. But I wasn't very good at it, so I wanted something that had personal urgency. What kind of personal urgency do you have any more than dealing with your deficits? That's who I am. I am that person with these major deficits. I spent years trying to hide it, but that's who I am, that's who I am. So I'm driven to paint portraits, and then I was, I think, driven to work from photographs. So I just have to translate from one flat surface to another. So in this photograph, one square in the photograph becomes 4 squares in the painting. And I look at that square and I think, what am I going to do? I can connect these and make it into a kind of shoe shape. I can make it a donut with a dark center. I can make whatever. And this is pretty much just shorthand, what I put on so far. None of those shapes will be the way they are right now. Just giving me something, to respond to when I get to the next thing. That basic structure of the rough draft.
When will the canvas, is it after the second stage, or can you already see hints as to how this will crystallize into an image?
I have ideas that something is liable to happen, but there's no guarantee. And in fact, if there were a guarantee that I had everything in the first pass, it wouldn't be very interesting to do the second and third or fourth passes. I always said about my paintings, because I used to spend like 2 months putting gesso on and wet sanding it and getting the surface just right. And you know, on the highway, you pass an apartment complex, and it said, if you lived here, you'd be home by now. So after I get this perfect white surface, I thought, well, gee, if I were Ryman, I'd be home now. And then I spent a long time putting this grid on, and if I were Agnes Martin, I'd be home now. And I still haven't started making a painting yet, so, but I'm feeling the surface, and I'm feeling the incremental unit, and I'm getting used to that rhythmic beat, the incremental unit. I'm getting used to, and I find it, I don't measure, I use no mathematics whatsoever. It's all bumping into things and finding and feeling it, and it's all the journey.